A historic night at the Emirates sees Wolfsburg beat Arsenal on aggregate and move on to face Barcelona in the Champions League final. So, let's talk about it. This Champions League season has had it all. Some really great group stage matchups. In the quarterfinal, you had a great tie between Lyon and Chelsea, which definitely delivered. Semifinals also definitely didn't disappoint. Chelsea and Barcelona, which was a repeat tie from the Champions League final back in 2021. Chelsea walking away with a draw at Camp Nou. Not many teams can say that they've done that. And actually, this is the first time that Barcelona go and play a game at Camp Nou and don't walk away winning. So, quite some history there as well in the Champions League season. Arsenal and Wolfsburg, a tie that also definitely didn't disappoint. You had a sellout crowd, you had a comeback, you had goals, you had extra time. You had everything in that incredible matchup that we got to see. The main topic today is that incredible second leg, and what a fun game that was to watch. Arsenal come into this game unchanged with the starting 11 from the first leg. Understandably, there's not many changes that one can do, taken in consideration the amount of injuries that they have and just the amount of options that they have available. It's not that many. Wolfsburg had it changed a little bit, with the main woman being Pop, who started and in my opinion was probably the game changer for Wolfsburg. Before we jump into some gameplay of both teams, my good friends at Sheeplots FC have this incredible pass network published, which is fantastic work and very accurate stuff that we're going to be discussing in the video today. Looking at Arsenal, you can see there's a lot of very important triangles and those that were really heavily abused throughout the game. Heavily abused in the sense that they were working well, and Arsenal was organized enough to not abandon them and stick with them throughout the entire 90 minutes and kind of maneuver them how they wanted, where if they were exposed in certain positions, they would still be in that triangle, working around how they wanted to do and opening the pockets that they wanted within that triangle, but doing so kind of in a different shape to just work around what Wolfsburg was doing. If we take a closer look on the Emirates, Lotte Wubben-Moy and Monum triangle, this was seen over and over again, and this was also another triangle that worked very well in the first leg, leading up to Arsenal pulling that momentum and really holding organization together. Now, unfortunately, I'm not able to actually use proper footage, so we're just going to have to stick with screenshots or else the video will get taken down. But what was really interesting to see, however, that Wolfsburg wasn't really picking up on it. And I have this great shot here from the first half, only 30 minutes in, that you can tell they're comfortably in a triangle. I mean, you've got Emirates right here, Monum, Lotte Wubben-Moy, and Emirates. And actually, the ball that Lotte Wubben-Moy just got or received was from Emirates. This triangle right here, and you can really look at it from the pass network as well, was emphasized throughout the entire game. And you can tell there's not really any Wolfsburg players that are pressuring them or trying to close down that space. Another triangle that was, again, very heavily worked out was Catley, McCabe, and Raffaelli. And I think we have to give some props for Catley because she's not naturally a winger that plays that up high within the field. She does have those very good qualities overlapping, not naturally play a winger, but I think her ability to work with McCabe, and I think if you watched the game, you could look at McCabe, and I mean, she was all over the pitch. That work rate, the ethic, the amount of running she put in is just absolutely unreal. And so to work around a player who moved a lot and just to be aware positionally where you were, but still hold well to these triangles that were working is very, very impressive from Catley. You can see Raffaelli right here passing the ball off to McCabe, who actually was a little bit higher on the pitch, but kind of dropped in internally. Catley's also on the side there waiting as an option if McCabe wanted to turn around. Obviously she's got options such as Stina, she's got options across the pitch, she's got options down the pitch, but having that triangle with Catley and Raffaelli just had so much stability and offered Arsenal so many different pockets to open up. In that first leg, McCabe almost always was available in the middle, even though she was playing as a winger primarily. Again, very similar shot, this time a little bit higher within the pitch. Raffaelli's driving up. You've got McCabe here. She actually made a run, and that's where the Raffaelli ball went next. But you've also got Catley on the side there available. So this triangle right here, was it high up the pitch, lower down in the pitch, in the middle? They almost always worked together as a unit, and I think that was really, really impressive. To have those two triangles on either sides with Lotte Wubben-Moy, Emirates, and Monum, sometimes even Palova, just depending on who was marking who. Catley and Raffaelli on the other side, really well worked, really well organized, and really disciplined with it, didn't abandon it, and I think that was really impressive. Palova, another excellent player, able to intercept, dive in, come in and drop and help, open up spaces. Really impressive stuff from a player who just kind of got thrown into the fire. You know, obviously a new signing. She probably wasn't expecting that she'll be starting games against Wolfsburg in the semi-final tie and play on for as long as she did. Leah Volti, another master class in the midfield, was able to assist and have that beautiful assist for Blackstenius in that first goal. Really nicely, just beautifully placed pass for Blackstenius to get a very important goal, and a goal on her 50th appearance for Arsenal across competition, a massive achievement for the Swedish player. She's always been kind of that aggressive player. She's always had some relatively good footwork, but combining that with hold-up play has really just evolved her, and you can tell how confident she is on the pitch, and I really like what I'm seeing from her. The Swedish team, and I'm sure the Swedish staff, is pleasant to see Stina Blackstenius be on good form like this going into the World Cup. I think Lotte Wubben-Moy for me also had a very great game until that last bit, unfortunately, where she had a little bit of a misstep with the ball, but very positionally aware of where the Wolfsburg threats were, and Wolfsburg have a ton of pace up top. I mean, they're not only just a bunch of forwards that are so good, but they're so pacey and they're so fast. You think you're marking them on the left, next thing you know, they're like all the way on the right with the ball and towing with another player. So for Lotte Wubben-Moy to have a good shift like she did today, I think Serena would be pleased to see up until the 117th minute. Let's talk about Wolfsburg, who I said earlier, Pop for me was the big game changer here for them, and she obviously scored a goal and she assisted the other one, both of which were headers. Her assist was a header, her goal was a header. She, for me, consistently continues to be one of the best players in the air. We saw that in the Euros, very aggressive in the air. We see this every season with Wolfsburg, but she is just so good in the air. It's not necessarily that she's just aggressive, but her timing and ability to position that ball in a tricky manner for the opposition is just so good and just so flawless almost. And she makes something when she's in the air. I mean, it's not like Wolfsburg had a ton of set pieces, but both goals came from set pieces, or at least the first two goals came from set pieces, because you've had a player like Pop whose movement is so tricky. And actually, speaking of movement, let's take a look here in the sequence in the 52nd minute. This is a Wolfsburg set piece, and Pop right here is, clearly moving forward, nothing too crazy. She's not really heavily marked or anything, not so included in the huddle, but she's moving forward. Great, fantastic. And then before you even know it, she's actually trailing backwards. Like, look at that positioning of her body. She's moving backwards. All of a sudden, she was moving forward. Everybody was moving forward. Next thing you know, she's moving backwards. Everybody's looking at her. She's got the ball. And from this specific sequence, she was able to cause a little bit of chaos in the box. Arsenal had to save a ball. It was kind of like an awkward, bouncy ball where Manu, it looked a little scary up there, but that's what Pop can do. On set pieces, she's so good with her movement. She can trail backwards, forwards, move around players, make everybody think that she's actually not that involved in there, but really she is the main threat. Going back to the passing network here, you can tell that she was pretty much in the middle of the action, in the middle of the pitch, a little bit out of positioning, specifically in that first half, and I think Wolfsburg didn't necessarily have the first half. Their pivots were isolated and they weren't able to put many great passes together, but that was also because they weren't putting many long passes together, which in the second half was the storyline. In fact, you could tell that Hendricks and Janssen were the two center backs that stayed pretty back, but they had a great role in delivering these long balls. In fact, Dominique Janssen had 21 long balls, just her. In fact, that's the same amount of long balls that Lotte Wubben-Moy and Jen Beattie had together combined. 21 just from Janssen. Her center back pairing, Hendricks, also had 9. That's just 30 long balls from your two center backs. Great moment here in the second half. Janssen clearly being pressed. I mean, you've got Stina Blackstenius right there marking somebody. You've got two more players on the side. McCabe running after her like a dog. She didn't stop. In the first half, Dominique Janssen probably would have tried to somehow go to the side, maybe even go back, or just kind of have a short pass, not really just throwing it to somebody specifically up front. That ball went far, and I mean, look at the amount of players that they had just beaten with that long ball. It wasn't necessarily Arsenal being out of position or Arsenal overcommitting. It was just how Arsenal wanted to play. They needed to be aggressive in a press, and especially because they were down in this position, they would press. But Wolfsburg was able to recognize that, and Wolfsburg was able to deal with that press and not fumble the ball or anything, and able to progress that ball forward and actually have a meaning. Another moment was here with Lena Oberdorf. Again, Wolfsburg on the ball. They're being pressed. There's 4 players just surrounding this little position here. What does Lena Oberdorf? Boom, long ball. But a long ball with a purpose. There's somebody there trying to target with that long ball. And just like that, I mean, it was a great delivery from Lynn Oberdorf, but just like that, you've shifted Arsenal just a tiny bit. You kind of want to put them out of balance, because when you're doing that big of a switch, somebody, you're going to have to look around and be like, right, where am I exactly? We just completely turned over the ball. Arsenal dealt with this pretty well. I mean, you can tell they had a lot of these red shirts back there, but these long balls avoided having to deal with that aggressive press of McCabe and Blackstenius and Palova, which something they were crumbling under that in the first half. They were not able to put good passes together. They were not able to be on a rhythm. They're not able to get something going for themselves. Ruud scoring against her former team. This is the second time she's done it at the Emirates. I mean, it just looks like Ruud loves to score at the Emirates, just not in a red shirt, apparently. Froms in the net had a great game. Distributionally, I thought she was good. Didn't really stumble too much. Again, being pressed the way she was being pressed by McCabe, I thought she dealt with it pretty well. Had some really good saves, some really important saves as well in crucial points of the game. Pauline Bremer, the substitute, was able to combine with another substitute, Jules Brand, and get that third goal with 2 minutes to go in extra time. Both players were on the pitch for 30 minutes and less. And why this timeline is very important, because that 30 minutes was the extra time. And for both substitute players to combine in extra time to get you that winning goal was kind of the silver lining, or kind of that advantage edge that Wolfsburg had over Arsenal. Unfortunately, Laura Wienreuther for Arsenal went down with a very unpleasant, ugly-looking pivot knee position and had to be stretched off. It didn't look great. No words from the club yet, but I'm not even going to say the 3 cursed letters, but it didn't look too great. Sina Blackstenius had to come off after she felt something in her quad, and really for Arsenal, they didn't have many options. I mean, the players that they had to put on were academy players. They're players that are just breaking into that first team, and they didn't have those fresh legs that they need. As Wolfsburg, they had those players, and I think Tommy Stroot played the substitutions perfectly well, executed the right players when to come on and how to come on, who were they coming off for. We've talked about how good their depth is, and we've talked about how good their bench is, but that bench specifically is so good in that forward talent. Like, you're putting on Jules Brand and Tabea Vasmuth from the bench. I mean, those are starters in probably like 70% of these European teams. That is depth, and that is the main edge that really won it for Wolfsburg, because other than that, it was a very tight game. It could have gone either way. Could have possibly gone to penalties. I was like, is this going to be another Chelsea-Lyon? Could have possibly very well been. Yes, it was a lot of Ruben Moy disposition in the back, and yes, she made a blunder on the ball, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it was 2 fresh players around her, probably had a little bit more energy, probably were more fresher legs, and were able to get that ball and quickly turn it over. I mean, this was a game just of counterattacks. So for Wolfsburg, priority number 1, make sure those players stay as fit and as healthy as possible going into the final. But 2, Stroot had the substitutions very well handled. In the second half, switching to a little bit more long balls was kind of exactly what they needed to do, because they were struggling with the Arsenal press. But as well, we have to give a lot of props to Arsenal. I mean, who thought that one of their main substitutes, Laura Wienreuther, who has broken, you can tell, into that first squad starting even over Emirates in a series of games. But it was a gritty display, a display with a lot of discipline. Again, those triangles that they consistently stuck with, so disciplined. I mean, doing that with the press and doing that with a lot of players, like I mentioned, out of position is hard. It's not easy, and to do it for the level that they did, they've got to be very proud of themselves. They've also got to be very proud with a sellout. I mean, what an incredible event that is. We've seen this happen, obviously, multiple times with Barcelona, to be able to grab these big crowds and numbers. Many of you already know that Wolfsburg and Arsenal actually faced each other in the quarterfinal stages last year. But what we did see this year is that the Wolfsburg Stadium, there was a 100% increase in attendance. It went from about 11,000 to this year's 22,000 for the Arsenal-Wolfsburg game. And the Emirates went from 5,000 to over 60,000. That is an 1,100% increase. That is no fluke that the club was somehow able to get in 60 people into that stadium on a Monday evening. No fluke. Arsenal have been at the forefront in investing in the game, and I don't really have to go into the history of what Arsenal have done into this women's football game. They're not a club that have just jumped on the hype wagon. They've been involved in developing the game, and I think it could have not happened to a better club than Arsenal to see a sellout like this happen. But they promoted it well, they marketed it very well, and I think it was actually even trickier to do that given the players that are out. A huge amount of the fan base wants to come and see Beth Mead play, and a huge amount of the fan base wants to come see Leah Williamson play, for example. When you have a lot of these players out, it actually makes it a little bit more challenging to sell these tickets. They engaged very well with the local community. They engaged very well with the supporters, those core supporters that they are aware can make it up into the Emirates in terms of proximity. It was a well-studied campaign, a well-executed campaign, and a tutorial that can be shown to a lot of other English teams possibly going into the Champions League, or just English teams to do this in the WSL. What's important now is not only have people engaged, but you want participation. I think this is something that we need to study when it comes to audience. You've got 60,000 people that just engaged at the stadium, but it's important to see how those 60,000 people can not only engage more to get more people in, but also continue participating engagement and participation go hand in hand. You've got them engaged, you got to keep them participated, or else you kind of lose that point of engagement. Quite disappointing now to see that the Eindhoven stadium that the final is going to take place has a max capacity of 35,000 people. I understand the stadium was chosen 3 years ago, but a body like UEFA, I mean, I'm sure they use statistical methods and equations and predicted growth, but if your predicted growth in 3 years was that a final is going to only have 35,000 people, that in my opinion is quite disappointing and actually kind of shows distrust in UEFA for the game. I hope that's not a stretch, but Wolfsburg, even though this was not their stadium and majority was it not their crowd, but they just qualified in front of 60,000 people. Barcelona is a team that you can definitely put money on that they will pull in crowds, and they just qualified in front of 70,000 people. So now both of them are going to go play in a stadium that has a capacity of 35,000 people. I'm not sure if that's the right direction, and I think, again, I know this was a decision taken 3 years ago, but there's definitely computer models that can figure out an expected growth should not be hitting 35,000. Anyways, I want to hear your opinion on how this tie was for you, Arsenal and Wolfsburg. In my opinion, really, really fun. I mean, so was the Chelsea and Barcelona one. Could have gone either way for both of these ties. Super exciting to see Wolfsburg go on and face Barcelona in a final. Some really big underdogs. They're still on a hunt for a treble, so that's going to be very exciting for the Germans. Also, massive apologies. It looks like I took a hiatus off the channel. I did not. I was unfortunately going through final exams and university assignments that I had to take a little bit of a step back to just focus on schoolwork. However, it was on a hiatus, so I'm back. A lot of fun content planned out. Again, would have really loved to talk about that Chelsea-Barcelona tie as well as this Wolfsburg-Arsenal first leg, but it's just school, man. It was in the way. It's good to be back. Good to be chatting and talking all about this. And I want to hear your opinions. What did you think of the game? Again, really hoping one day I can get some of this footage playing. But unfortunately, with the whole UEFA rights and DAZN, it's a little bit hard to not get the video taken down. So we'll have to deal with screenshots for the next few, but definitely working on getting some proper footage going on for this analysis videos. Let me know what you think of this. Let me know what you think of the tie. And how much did you enjoy that very, very fun game? And I will talk to you later.